Welcome to today's edition of Gibson's Caring Corner, and we're going to talk about driving.
So, the 10 warning signs that seniors may be unsafe on the road. It's important to collect facts before making any recommendations about whether an older adult should continue driving. And here are some signs that will have further investigation that could be needed.
So whenever you're stopping by and visiting your mom or dad and you're looking at their vehicle, it's important to look for those mysterious dents that may be on their vehicle.
Yeah, if an older adult can't seem to explain the dent, or you notice multiple instances of damage, further investigation may be needed.
And you know, our older adults, our parents, grandparents, they may have trouble turning to see when backing up. Growing up, you'll always see people exercising. They'll go, now, all right, bend your head forward, bend it back, go to the left, go to the right. And that's keeping yourself flexible. Yeah. But when you get to certain ages, it is hard to turn and look behind you. So if they can't see where they're backing up, how safe is that?
Right. So the next one is confusing the gas with the brake pedal.
If a senior's getting confused about how the vehicle operates, it could be time to give up those car keys.
Mm-hmm. So increased irritation and agitation when driving.
A lot of aging adults have chronic conditions, chronic pain, or chronic poor health, such as arthritis, and that can increase agitation. You know, when you're trying to hold on to the steering wheel and those thumbs that used to hold well, they just hurt. So that can make someone agitated, which can make their driving not as good.
So the next one is bad calls on left-hand turns.
Yeah, turning left can be tricky, and it can be dangerous for older adults who may have experienced a decline in cognitive abilities. And I would think that's probably because they're having to look for that oncoming traffic before they make that left turn.
That's right. So, parking gone awry.
Difficulty parking, including parallel parking, could cause damage to an older person's adult vehicle, as well as those vehicles around it. You know, we have a new car, and I can't wait to test that button. We got to do it when nobody's around, where you push it and it parks itself. But most people don't have that ability to do that. So parallel parking, how easy is that?
Easier for some than others.
That's right. I never could do it well. Creighton, he could do it really good.
All right, the next one, difficulty staying within the lines.
It could be a sign if that fatigue or vision problems are making it difficult to stay the course, and grandma or grandpa or mom and dad, they're starting to go over the yellow or over the white, not between the lines. So it may be time that they give up those car keys.
That's right. So delayed reaction and response time.
Safe driving depends on those things. If you were to have a delayed reaction or response, you could actually end up killing someone, or you could die, because it's so important to make those responses at the right time. And in North Carolina, the doctors, they don't have to take away driver's license. Yeah, and that is something that's really left up to the children to do whenever it's time. So, with that being said, we have had clients over the last 20 years that have had Alzheimer's disease. And we had one that was in stage 3 that, if they were to go out, they couldn't remember how to get back home. But because Alzheimer's, you can remember so well many, many years ago, she could go back in and pass her driver's test. So after her license was taken away, she went back in to the local North Carolina driver's license testing. Retook the test, passed, and our state said, you're okay to drive with stage 3 Alzheimer's. So there are some important things that we need to make sure that we help our parents stay safe, our grandparents stay safe, and others on the road safe.
Yeah. So the next one, driving the wrong speed.
Well, I kind of like to giggle with this. Creighton and I, every once in a while we'll get behind somebody that might be going 15 miles an hour.
In a 55.
Yeah, in a 55. And we will laugh at each other and we'll go, oh, looky there. There's a potential client that might need our services here coming pretty soon. And we'll kind of giggle about that. But it is important to go the right speed. Yeah, there are some young whippersnappers out there that could just come on the right speed or maybe a little bit over the speed limit up on you. And then you could cause a serious accident going that 15 miles an hour.
So the last one for the day is riding the brake.
Riding the brake could be a sign that a driver no longer has confidence. They're maybe afraid. Oh, I'm scared to go forward. I'm scared to turn. Oh, what's that in the road? I'm scared I'm going to hit that bump. I don't know what to do. But hitting that brake constantly is some very serious signs of showing anxiety or being afraid to be behind the wheel. And nobody should be behind a wheel driving, a vehicle if they're afraid.
That's right.
So with that being said, I hope you have learned a little bit about how you could help someone you love stay safe, or possibly steps that you might need to help take away their keys so that they can be safe and you provide transportation, or have someone like a home instead provide transportation so that they can be safe on the roads. Thank you for joining us today for Gibson's Caring Corner.
Hi, welcome back to Health Tips with Cale, your exercise science, health, and fitness enthusiast. This week we're going to be picking up with Carbohydrates Part 3, How Much Should We Be Eating? In review, for Part 1, we discussed what are carbohydrates and the difference between simple carbohydrates known as sugars and complex carbohydrates known as starches and fiber. Part 2, we discussed the different roles of carbohydrates, from the quick energy production to the quick glucose production that is used for energy storage, influence on fat and protein metabolism, and the sugars that help make up certain molecules in the cells of our bodies. As a brief overview for today, we're going to be going over the general recommendation for the average healthy adult, what happens if we eat excess amounts of carbohydrates, and should we be looking at lowering carbohydrate intake for weight loss? So for general recommendations for the average healthy adult, the Food and Nutrition Board of National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine recommend a minimum of 130 grams per day of carbohydrates just to meet the needs that the brain and the nervous system need to remain fueled and make sure that you don't have this brain fog or you're not feeling sleepy throughout the day, but really making sure that you stay alert and able to function as you need to. Now, however, because our bodies aren't just brain and nervous system, I know some of you who are really smart might disagree with that, but we do have other things such as muscles and organs and all these other cells in our bodies and tissues that really need this energy in order for it to properly function. Like your heart needs energy to function, your intestinal tract needs energy to help you break down foods and to make sure you get the nutrients that you need. And so with that, they actually recommend eating anywhere from 45 to 65% of total calories, which is about 225 to 325 grams based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And really about 10% of this, I would say at the most 10% of this should be coming from added sugars. And added sugars are any sugars or sweeteners that have been added during a process to foods or beverages. So things like your Coca-Cola or your Pepsi or any other sodas out there, and even, like, I hate to say it, but even some meats out there, they've added sugars. Bread is one thing. I don't know if I can find a bread out there that does not have some sort of corn syrup, honey, or sugars or sweeteners added to it. And there's just so many foods that have been processed to have those added sugars. So really try to look out for those added sugars and try and remain or keep those less than 10% of your total daily intake would be for best. Now, so what happens if we eat an excess amount of carbohydrates? What if we're just a really big fruit lover and we didn't eat 325 grams of carbohydrates from fruit? Maybe we had 400 grams of carbohydrates from fruit. Then what? Or maybe you just really like soda and you just had 10 sodas that day along with everything else that you ate. Um, those are I would really recommend maybe you go leaning more towards the fruit eating if you're looking for a bit something on the sweeter side, obviously, because sodas are really not good for you. But leading into sodas, we know sodas can lead to things such as dental hygiene problems. And so the Food and Nutrition Board of National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine and the Heart Research Institute have said that diets high in added sugar or high in carbohydrates often lead to dental problems. So when you have dental problems from drinking too many sodas, that's probably why. It's probably because you're having too many carbs all at once, or maybe just having too many sodas overall. Um, and so dental problems can be things like cavities and gum disease. High sugars can also lead to increased bad cholesterols, decreased good cholesterols. It can also lead to large metabolic loads on the body, which then can lead to metabolic diseases. One thing could also be leading to type 2 diabetes. Another thing is high carbohydrates or excess carbohydrates can lead to increased weight gain, and they can also increase the risk of heart disease. Personally, for me, I've also noticed another thing that maybe my energy levels aren't really smooth or aren't really, um, yeah, I wouldn't say smooth, but maybe I might have a giant spike and then I might crash and then I might get a little bit back up. But for the most part, it's not this kind of well-rounded, maybe a little bit of a dip and then come back up. And so for me, kind of eliminating the amount of carbohydrates that I have, and especially the added sugars and sweeteners from foods, I've really noticed that my energy balance overall throughout the day has kind of leveled out a little bit more. Yes, I might not have such a big high, but at the same time, I'm also not feeling such a low throughout the day. And I feel like I can maintain my energy levels more more so or more balanced throughout the day, and I'm not having to take a nap for 2 hours and about 2 o'clock or so. And so what happens if, and so let's just say that we've over time had too many carbohydrates in our diet and we've added that weight gain. So should we be looking at lowering those amount of carbohydrates to lose that weight? Well, if you're above that 65%, then yes, I would say maybe lowering your carbohydrate intake. And honestly, a lot of us probably don't need 65% of our daily diet coming from carbohydrates. A lot of us might only need 45 to 50% unless you're really active. But if you're most of us and we're just sitting at a desk job or you're sitting for most of the day and you're just being sedentary, then you really don't need a whole lot of carbohydrates. You don't really need a lot of fast energy to get you throughout the day. So if you are eating too many carbohydrates and maybe have gained a little bit of weight, then yes, kind of maybe backing down on how many carbs you eat. But once again, trying to keep around that 45-50% of your total caloric intake would probably be best. But it's really kind of independent for everybody. Maybe you thrive better off of high carbohydrates, you feel like. And when you have less, such as 50%, maybe you feel more lethargic or you just don't feel right, then maybe sticking around that 65 is probably best for you. But I would say probably most of us probably need to lean more towards that 45 and 50% and just kind of maybe see how you feel on different foods and the amount of carbohydrates and foods that you're eating throughout the day and see what works best for you overall. So the NASM blog published in 2021 analyzed dozens of scientific studies looking at lowering carbohydrates in the diet to see if that helps with weight loss. And this is what they had to say. They said low carb diets are not necessary for weight loss, as almost all diets can result in weight loss when there is a negative energy balance. So when you're putting out more energy, or when you're burning off more calories than what you're intaking, so if you burn, say, 2,000 calories, but you only ate 1,800, then you're probably going to lose a little bit of weight over time that way. They also said that from a body fat mass perspective, low carb diets may result in inferior fat mass reductions in shorter term diets. So the keto diet is not the best diet out there if you're looking to reduce a lot of fat mass very quickly. If you're looking to maybe do a body composition change, maybe you're looking to burn off some fat but gain some muscle, a keto diet might not be the best option, is what they're saying out of this. They go on to say that following a low-carb diet, such as a keto diet, is no better or worse compared to most other forms of dieting. And not even a keto diet is considered low-carb. You can have low carbs, which is around that 130 gram a day or 100 grams a day. Keto diets are really efficient or effective at about 50 grams or less of carbohydrates throughout the day. And so having a low-carb intake is really anything that's below what you normally would have, or below the rest of your macronutrient range, or your percentage chart. So if you're having more protein, such as 65% proteins and 15% fats, and then the rest is in carbohydrates, that's considered kind of a low carbohydrate day, especially if you're eating like only 100 grams of carbohydrates a day, or even like 130 grams per day. That can still be considered a low carb diet. And so trying to stick on those low carb diets or a keto diet is not going to be better or worse for you if you're looking for a way to lose weight or fat. They also had to go through and say low carb diets often result in more immediate water weight loss, and glycogen, which is your stored energy, depletion. So a lot of times people go on these keto diets, and what happens is they lose 10 pounds in the first 3 days. It's like, oh my gosh, I just lost all this weight really quickly. And it's like, great, but most of that is not going to be fat, unfortunately. A lot of that is going to be water that your body needs to stay hydrated and to function. And that can really be bad. And making sure that if you are doing a keto diet, making sure to drink lots of water is going to help you out best. But even then, we still need some carbs to kind of help retain water retention. But if you are doing a low carb diet or a keto diet, then I really recommend trying to keep up with your water intake, and then maybe increasing your fat intake also. That way your body can use the fat as a fuel source and not just based off of protein, because your muscles are also based off of protein, and your body might not really know the difference between the muscle it needs, or the muscle on your body, and the protein that you're eating. And if it needs fuel and that's all you have is muscle, then it's going to burn that muscle like it would for the protein that you're eating to make sure it has enough energy throughout the day. But overall, we just talked about the average amount, which is about 45 to 65% of our total caloric intake needs to come from carbohydrates. And then we also talked about how excess carbohydrates can lead to things such as weight gain or dental problems such as cavities and gum disease. And also looking at that keto diets and low carb diets might actually not be the best. But hopefully we can talk a little bit more about those keto diets and try and figure out how many more calories we need to eat, or carbohydrates we need to eat, especially if we have things like diabetes and other metabolic diseases in future episodes. But thank you for joining today with Cale's Health Tips.
Welcome back to today's edition of Let's Go Back Through Time. These are the stories of Elizabeth Anne Reinhardt Gibson, and she was from Mooresville, North Carolina. Granddad took his 2 grandsons with him to Concord, North Carolina, to the Reed Mine. Reed Gold Mine is what most people around here call it, where they camped and dug for gold. One morning, they had made a bonfire to cook their breakfast, and as they sat down to eat, they poured coffee in tin cups to drink with their ham and scrambled eggs. Albert, Udi, Coit Reinhardt, and Granddad all took a sip of coffee. Granddad spit it out and asked, "What the matter with this coffee?" I had to put an X there. Sorry, guys. Upon further examining the coffee pot, they found what the problem was. The young boys had washed the supper dishes, pots and pans, and left the dirty dishwater and dish rag in the pot. Thinking it was ready for fresh coffee because, after all, it was heavy when they were ready to cook breakfast that morning on the fire, it went. So that was some dish rag taste that Granddad got whenever he took a sip of that coffee. Now, about the delightful treat and skill in processing the best part of products on the farm, winemaking. And boy, didn't Anne Reinhardt love winemaking. My knowledge of making homemade wine came from Granddad. He worked and toiled over his grape vineyard all year to get ready to gather the grapes just at the right time. Juicy and sweet grapes were gathered and carried to the press in the backyard. A huge 40-foot tree was used by making a rectangular hole in a big locust tree to make a weight press to squeeze the juice from the grapes. Winemaking took many days and much patience in processing it. After squeezing the juice, it was strained and put into 5- and 10-gallon glass jugs and placed in the dirt wine cellar where it was mixed with 3 pounds of sugar to the gallon of juice, lightly covered with a gauze covering or a cork. Granddad and Dad used copper tubing coiled from one jug to the other to give the wine a real kick. They were known for their winemaking. Dad always kept a small-mouthed vinegar jug filled with good wine in his 55-gallon wooden keg that he used for a hog brand container. It was behind the old house beside the hog pen. Each night when he went to feed his hogs, he would have a little slug of wine out of the jug. Oftentimes, I would meet my dad at the hog pen and enjoy a slug myself. He began offering me wine pretty young. My liking for good wine began early in life. It was one of the better things in life. Mother would have literally had cardiac arrest had she known how I enjoyed wine at that young age. I never told her of my wine tasting until long after my dad's death, and I was even married then. Even then, she had a fit. She not only was angry at me, but also at my dead dad. Once after I married W.A. and I went to Dad and Mother's on Sunday morning instead of going to church, Mom had gone to church that morning. When we got there, Dad was sitting on the front porch by himself. We sat for a while, then Dad asked if we would like to go to the wine cellar, and of course I was ready. We went through the house. Dad got 1 water glass, and to the cellar we went. Dad poured a glass full, 8 ounces, took 1 sip, and handed the glass to W.A., who took a tiny little sip out of the glass and handed it to me. I drank the glass full. W.A. was having a conniption fit, telling me I would get sick. I handed the glass back to Dad. He filled the glass this time with Scuppernong wine, handed it to W.A., who took another tiny little sip and handed it to me. I slugged it down while W.A. was giving me a fit over drinking too much. I remember all the cousins who came in to visit on Sunday being taken to the wine cellar for sampling the delicious goods stored there. Uncle Bill would come from Statesville with Johnny, Pear, Lena, Gladys, and Catherine. Lena was the one I remember the best, for she always had John give me nickels. He would go to Walt Mayhew's service station at the top of the hill on Highway 150, where we would buy a whole bag full of candy, BB Bats, and all the flavors, banana, strawberry, vanilla, all-day suckers, Peter Paul caramels, jawbreakers, coconut bars, chocolate-covered creams, just about anything you could dream of with that nickel. And that's the end of today's stories with Anne Elizabeth Reinhardt Gibson. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you for watching Caring Corner. make sure you head over to our Facebook and YouTube channel where you will find this program along with others. Be sure that you subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so that you will receive notifications for our weekly program. Don't forget to share this program to your social media platforms. If there's a question that you would like to ask, make sure to email it to caringcorner22@gmail.com. We hope to see you on the next episode of Caring Corner.